The grand chamber of the Galactic Council sparkled under the light of 3 artificial suns. 200 alien species sat in rising circles, like a giant theater built for the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Today's entertainment: watching the humans squirm. Tom Reed, Earth's ambassador, stood in the center of the chamber. His simple black suit looked plain compared to the colorful robes and shimmering scales of the alien representatives around him. But he kept his back straight and his face calm, just as 3 years of diplomatic training had taught him. The Emperor of the Stellar Empire, a tall figure with golden skin that seemed to glow from within, rose from his throne. His voice boomed through the chamber. To celebrate humanity's 5th year in the Galactic Council, I offer a most precious gift. His 6-fingered hand waved toward a dark doorway. The chamber went quiet. Then came the sound of shuffling feet. Princess Dawn entered the chamber. Even the most polite diplomats couldn't help but gasp. The princess had gray skin that hung in loose folds, like a shirt 3 sizes too big. Her eyes, all 7 of them, blinked at different times. When she moved, her joints made clicking sounds like someone dropping marbles on a metal floor. "My beloved daughter," the Emperor continued, his voice full of fake sadness, "will join in marriage with Earth's ambassador, uniting our great peoples forever." The chamber exploded with laughter. Some delegates tried to hide their amusement behind their tentacles or wings. Others didn't bother, letting their hoots and howls echo off the crystal walls. A blue-skinned diplomat actually fell out of his seat, rolling with laughter. Tom felt his ears turn red, but he didn't move. He knew the rules of galactic politics. Refusing such a gift from the most powerful empire in the galaxy would be seen as an insult big enough to start a war that Earth couldn't win. The Emperor's smile grew wider. Of course, if Earth feels unworthy of such an honor, Earth accepts this generous offer, Tom said quickly, his voice steady despite his racing heart. He bowed low, just as the diplomatic handbook suggested. "We are overwhelmed by the Emperor's kindness." More laughter filled the chamber. A small alien in the front row was laughing so hard that steam came out of its ears. Princess Dawn walked toward Tom. Her movement was strange, like she was dancing to music only she could hear. When she reached him, she extended her hand. Tom took it, trying not to show surprise at how warm her skin felt. For a moment, just a brief second, Tom thought he saw something in those 7 eyes. Not sadness or embarrassment, but something else, something that looked almost like amusement. "The wedding will be in 3 Earth months," the Emperor announced. "Until then, the princess will stay on Earth to learn human customs." His voice dripped with fake sweetness, like honey covering a trap. As Tom led the princess from the chamber, the laughter followed them. But he noticed something odd. The princess's personal guard, a massive warrior covered in metal armor, wasn't laughing. Instead, the guard was watching the Emperor with what looked like satisfaction. Tom had been in politics long enough to know when there was more to a story. As the doors closed behind them, he made a mental note to read everything Earth had about Stellar Empire customs. Something told him this ugly princess was more than she appeared to be. In the chamber, the council members were still wiping tears of laughter from their eyes, tentacles, and sensing organs. They thought they had just watched humanity get humiliated. They didn't notice that Princess Dawn's shuffling walk had a slight spring to it, almost like someone trying not to smile while telling a very good joke. The Global Defense Council room was quieter than a library at midnight. 50 of Earth's top leaders sat around a massive oak table, staring at the hologram floating above it. The image showed Princess Dawn walking through the Galactic Council chamber, her odd movements making some of them shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Turn it off," Tom Reed said, rubbing his temples. The hologram disappeared, leaving only the soft glow of evening sun through the windows of the Washington, D.C. building. That's what happened 2 days ago. Now we have less than 3 months to prepare for a royal wedding that could either save or doom Earth. Can't we just? General Mills started, then stopped when he saw the looks on his colleagues' faces. Everyone knew refusing the Emperor's gift would be like poking the sleeping bear with a stick. If the bear had planet-destroying weapons and a grudge against humans. Dr. Anna White, Earth's head of alien biology studies, spread her papers across the table. Her red hair was messy, like she hadn't slept in days. "There's something strange here," she said, pointing to charts full of complex symbols. "These are the princess's medical files that the Stellar Empire sent us. I've been studying their species for years, but these readings, they're different from anything I've seen before." "Different how?" asked Tom, leaning forward. "It's like..." Dr. White frowned, searching for simple words. "Imagine a butterfly, but we're only seeing the caterpillar stage. These readings suggest the princess is going through some kind of change." The room burst into whispers. Tom held up his hand for quiet. "Are you saying she might get even more?" He struggled to find a polite word. "I don't know," Dr. White admitted. "But there's more. Look at her brain patterns." She pointed to a series of wavy lines. "They're off the charts. The princess might be the smartest being I've ever studied." "Great," someone muttered. "So she's both ugly and smart enough to make us look stupid." Tom's assistant, James Cooper, who had been quietly taking notes, suddenly spoke up. "Has anyone else noticed the timing? The Emperor could have offered this marriage any time in the last 5 years. Why now?" The room went quiet again as people considered this. "The princess arrives tomorrow," Tom said finally. "We need to prepare. I want our best scientists working with Dr. White. If there's something we're missing, find it. General Mills, increase security but make it invisible. We don't want to look nervous. And someone get me everything we have on Stellar Empire Royal Customs. If we're going to host a princess, we better do it right." As people started leaving the room, Dr. White caught Tom's arm. "There's one more thing," she whispered. "The princess's personal guard. Their species can't wear metal armor. It burns their skin. So either that guard is suffering constant pain, or it's not what it appears to be," Tom finished, his eyes widening. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the capital. Somewhere up there, a spaceship was bringing the princess to Earth. Tom stared at the darkening sky, wondering if they were about to host the galaxy's biggest joke, or stumble into something much, much bigger. In her lab that night, Dr. White stayed late, poring over the medical files. The more she looked, the more confused she became. According to these readings, the princess's body was storing massive amounts of energy. It was like watching a star about to go supernova, except it was happening inside a living being. She glanced at the calendar on her wall. 3 months until the wedding. Something told her those would be the most interesting 3 months of her life, if they all survived them. News helicopters circled like hungry birds over the landing pad at Earth's International Spaceport in Nevada. Camera crews from every country pointed their lenses at the sky, waiting for the first glimpse of the Stellar Empire's royal ship. The morning sun was hot, making the air shimmer above the concrete. 3 minutes to landing, a voice announced over the speakers. Tom Reed stood at the front of the welcoming committee, tugging at his collar. Next to him, Dr. White clutched her tablet, her eyes glued to its screen. "The energy readings are even stronger now," she whispered. A dark shape appeared in the sky, growing larger by the second. The royal ship looked like a giant silver tundra, smooth and shining. It landed without a sound, not even stirring the dust on the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, a door appeared in the side of the ship. Princess Dawn emerged, her gray skin looking even stranger in Earth's sunlight. Behind her came her personal guard, metal armor gleaming. Several reporters gasped. One cameraman dropped his equipment. "Welcome to Earth, Your Highness," Tom said, bowing deeply. The princess made a sound like wind chimes in a storm, apparently her way of saying hello. When she moved toward the waiting cars, her 7 eyes blinked in a pattern that almost looked like Morse code. Dr. White's tablet suddenly beeped loudly. "Sorry," she said, quickly silencing it. but her hands were shaking as she looked at the readings. The drive to the royal guest house was interesting. Every time they passed a group of humans, Princess Dawn would press her face against the car window, all 7 eyes wide with curiosity. Her personal guard sat perfectly still, like a statue made of metal. At one point, James Cooper, who was riding in the front seat, noticed something odd in the rearview mirror. When the princess thought no one was looking, she would touch different parts of her loose, gray skin, as if checking something. The guest house was actually a small palace, built specially for the occasion. As they walked inside, the princess stopped suddenly, making everyone behind her freeze. "Is something wrong, Your Highness?" Tom asked nervously. The princess pointed at a painting on the wall, a famous one showing a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. She stared at it for a long time, then made that wind chime sound again. Was it just their imagination, or did it sound like laughter this time? Later that evening, after the princess had retired to her rooms, the humans gathered in a secure meeting room. "Did you see how she looked at that butterfly painting?" James asked. Dr. White nodded excitedly. "And my readings went crazy every time she moved. It's like her whole body is changing." "But into what?" "The guard never leaves her side," Tom added. "And I noticed something else. It never eats, never drinks, never seems to need anything." "Maybe because it's not really a guard," James suggested. "Maybe it's something else entirely." Their discussion was interrupted by a strange sound from upstairs, like singing, but in a pitch humans had never heard before. The crystal glasses on the table vibrated. Through the window, they could see lights dancing in the princess's room, casting beautiful shadows on the walls. 3 months, Tom said quietly. "Whatever's really going on here, we have 3 months to figure it out before the wedding." Dr. White looked at her tablet one more time. The energy readings from the princess's room were now higher than anything she'd ever seen. "I don't think we have that long," she said. "Something big is coming. The question is, what?" Outside, the stars twinkled in the night sky. Somewhere up there, the Galactic Council was probably still laughing at the humans stuck with the ugly princess. But down here on Earth, a few humans were starting to suspect they weren't the ones being fooled after all. Dr. White hadn't left her lab in 3 days. Empty coffee cups surrounded her computer, and her whiteboard was covered in complicated drawings. She'd been comparing the princess's medical files with every piece of information Earth had about the Stellar Empire's biology. At 3:47 a.m., she finally found what she was looking for. "Oh my God," she whispered, then grabbed her phone. "Tom, you need to come to the lab. Now." 20 minutes later, Tom Reed rushed in, still wearing his pajamas under his coat. James Cooper followed, carrying 3 fresh coffees. They found Dr. White standing in front of a huge screen showing 2 DNA patterns side by side. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the first pattern. "This is normal Stellar Empire DNA." She pointed to the second one. "And this is the princess's DNA. See the difference?" Tom and James looked at the swirling patterns. The first one was simple, like a regular DNA double helix. But the princess's DNA looked like it was trying to turn itself inside out, with extra pieces growing in all directions. "What does it mean?" James asked, handing out the coffees. Dr. White took a big sip before answering. "The Stellar Empire has been hiding something from the galaxy. Their species goes through a metamorphosis every 1,000 years. Like a butterfly, remember? And the ugly stage." She paused for effect. "It's not a defect. It's preparation for becoming their next ruler." The coffee cup slipped from Tom's hand, spilling across the floor. Nobody noticed. "You're saying the princess isn't ugly, she's evolving?" James asked. "Better than that," Dr. White said. She pulled up an ancient text she'd found buried in Earth's alien culture database. According to this, the transformation gives them incredible powers. The loose skin, it's making room for growth. Those 7 eyes, they'll merge into 2 that can see into different dimensions. Even those weird sounds she makes, Their practice for a voice that will be able to command stars. Tom sat down heavily in a chair. The Emperor isn't trying to humiliate us, he said slowly. He's trying to get rid of her before she transforms. Because once she does, she'll be more powerful than him, James finished, and legally bound to Earth through marriage. Suddenly, all the security alarms in the building started blaring. Dr. White's computer screen flashed with new readings from the guest house. The energy levels around the princess were spiking higher than ever. They rushed to the windows. In the distance, they could see the guest house glowing with a soft blue light. The princess's metal-covered guard stood on the roof, but something was different. The armor was changing, flowing like liquid silver in the moonlight. "It's not armor at all," Dr. White gasped. "It's a Chrysalis Guardian, an ancient being that protects their rulers during transformation. The Emperor had to send it with her, or everyone would have known something was wrong." Tom's phone buzzed. It was a message from the Galactic Council. The Emperor was demanding his daughter's immediate return, claiming she was too sick to continue with the marriage arrangements. "Too late," James said, looking at Dr. White's readings. "Whatever's happening, it's already started." They watched as the blue light grew brighter. Around the city, people were coming out of their homes, staring at the glowing guest house. News helicopters were already lifting off, their spotlights pointed at the incredible scene. "What do we do now?" James asked. Tom straightened his pajama top, trying to look diplomatic even in sleepwear. "We protect her. If the Emperor wants to stop this, he'll have to go through Earth first." "And then?" Dr. White asked. "And then," Tom said, watching the light pulse like a heartbeat in the night sky, "we get ready to help our ugly duckling turn into a swan. A very powerful, galaxy-ruling swan." Behind them, Dr. White's computer kept recording the energy readings as they climbed higher and higher. The transformation hadn't just begun. It was about to change everything. The Global Defense Council room was packed. Military generals sat next to diplomats, scientists next to lawyers. On screens around the room, leaders from every Earth nation watched and waited. The morning sun was just rising, casting long shadows through the windows. "The Emperor has given us 6 hours to return the princess," Tom Reed announced, his voice tired but determined. He hadn't slept since the discovery in Dr. White's lab. "If we refuse, he threatens war." "Let me show you something," Dr. White said, standing up. She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed the guest house, now surrounded by a gentle blue glow. "That light? It's a protective field. The Chrysalis Guardian created it when the Emperor made his threat. According to ancient texts, nothing can penetrate it until the transformation is complete. So we couldn't return the princess even if we wanted to," James Cooper added with a small smile. General Mills leaned forward. "Can we fight them if they attack?" "We won't have to," said Martha Jones, Earth's head lawyer. Everyone turned to look at her. She held up an ancient-looking tablet. While everyone else was watching the light show, my team was digging through stellar empire law. We found something interesting. She tapped the tablet, and ancient alien text appeared on the main screen. "This law is 10,000 years old. It says that once a royal transformation begins, any attempt to interfere is an act of treason, even by the current emperor." The room burst into excited whispers. "Better yet," Martha continued, "there's another law about royal marriages. Once arranged, they can only be broken if both sides agree. And Earth," she smiled broadly, "definitely does not agree." Tom stood up. "So you're saying?" "I'm saying the Emperor has trapped himself," Martha finished. "If he attacks Earth, he commits treason against his future ruler. If he tries to break the marriage, he needs our permission. And if he does nothing, he hands over his empire to his daughter and her human allies," James said, finally understanding. No wonder he was so desperate to get rid of her. Suddenly, Dr. White's tablet started beeping rapidly. "Energy spike," she shouted. Everyone rushed to the windows. The blue glow around the guest house had grown stronger. The chrysalis guardian, still in its liquid metal form, was moving in complex patterns on the roof. Inside, they could see the princess's shadow, her shape already beginning to change. "How long until the transformation is complete?" Tom asked. "At this rate, 3 days," Dr. White answered. "We need to keep her safe until then." "Already done," General Mills said. "Every satellite we have is watching for stellar empire ships. The public story is that we're conducting a joint scientific experiment with the princess. The media's eating it up." Tom looked around the room. 5 days ago, the Galactic Council laughed at us for getting stuck with an ugly princess. Now we're about to be allied with the most powerful being in the galaxy. He smiled. "I think it's our turn to laugh." James raised his hand. "Just one question. Has anyone actually asked the princess what she wants?" Everyone fell silent. Then they heard a sound like crystal wind chimes, the princess's laugh. She stood in the doorway, her 7 eyes all focused on James. Her skin was glowing slightly blue now, and when she moved, they could see patterns of light under her loose gray skin. The chrysalis guardian stood behind her, its liquid metal form rippling. The princess made a series of musical sounds that everyone somehow understood. "What makes you think this wasn't my plan all along?" Tom looked at the Emperor's message again and smiled. In trying to get rid of his too clever daughter, the Emperor had given her exactly what she wanted: an alliance with the one species in the galaxy creative enough to help her take the throne. The tables hadn't just turned. They had turned exactly the way the princess had planned. The Galactic Council chamber was more crowded than ever before. News of the princess's transformation had spread across the galaxy, and no one wanted to miss what happened next. The Emperor sat on his throne, his golden skin looking pale and sickly under the artificial suns. Tom Reed stood in the center again, just like he had 3 months ago. But this time, he wasn't alone. Dr. White stood to his left, her tablet displaying the final transformation readings. James Cooper stood to his right, holding a large book of stellar empire laws. Behind them, the chrysalis guardian towered in its liquid metal form, still protecting its charge. "Where is my daughter?" the Emperor demanded, his voice shaking slightly. "I order her to appear." "She'll be here," Tom said calmly. "In fact, she should arrive in exactly 10 seconds. The chamber's huge doors began to glow with blue light, the same light they'd seen at the guest house, but stronger now, much stronger. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The doors dissolved into pure energy, and Princess Dawn floated through them. But she didn't look like a princess anymore. Her loose gray skin had transformed into something like living starlight. Her 7 eyes had merged into 2 that looked like deep space itself, filled with galaxies and nebulae. When she moved, reality seemed to bend around her. The Emperor stood up so quickly his throne fell over. "This marriage is void," he shouted. "I declare it null and—" "You can't," James interrupted, opening his law book. "According to Imperial Law 7249B, a royal marriage arrangement can only be broken if both parties agree. Earth does not agree." "Then I'll make you agree." The Emperor raised his hand, energy crackling around it. The chrysalis guardian moved faster than anyone could see, placing itself between the Emperor and the humans. But it wasn't necessary. Princess Dawn, no, Empress Dawn now, waved her hand gently. The Emperor's energy fizzled out like a dead battery. "Father," she said, her voice sounding like a choir of stars singing, "you tried to send me away because you feared my power. But in doing so, you gave me exactly what our empire needs: an alliance with the most interesting species in the galaxy." She floated closer to the throne. Every movement she made left trails of cosmic light in the air. "Humans don't just adapt to problems," she continued. "They find solutions no one else would think of. They look at an ugly princess and see potential. They take a diplomatic insult and turn it into victory." The Emperor tried to step back, but found he couldn't move. The council, He stammered. They laughed. They all laughed. Yes, Dawn smiled, her stellar eyes twinkling. And now they're going to watch as I take the throne you tried so hard to keep. Dr. White's tablet was going crazy, recording power levels that shouldn't have been possible. The transformation had done more than change Dawn's appearance. It had made her into something ancient texts could only hint at. The marriage stands, Dawn announced to the council. Earth and the Stellar Empire are now one, and anyone who has a problem with that. She raised her hand, and 1,000,000 points of light danced around her fingers. The message was clear. No one laughed this time. In fact, many council members were suddenly very interested in their shoes, tentacles, or whatever they used for feet. Tom stepped forward and bowed to Dawn. Earth looks forward to a long and peaceful relationship with the Stellar Empire. Dawn's smile lit up the chamber like a new sun. Oh, it will be much more than peaceful, she said. It's going to be magnificent. The Emperor could only watch as his plan to get rid of an unwanted heir turned into the biggest political transformation the galaxy had ever seen. And somewhere in the chamber, someone actually did laugh. But this time, they were laughing with the humans, not at them. 1 year after the transformation, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. The rising circles of seats now included a special section for human representatives. The artificial suns had been replaced by a gentle cosmic light that came from the throne itself, where Empress Dawn sat with all the grace of a newborn star. Tom Reed stood beside the throne, no longer just Earth's ambassador at the imperial concert. He wore robes that shifted colors like the aurora borealis, though he'd insisted on keeping his simple black shoes. Some habits were hard to break. The trade agreement with the Rigel system is approved, Dawn announced, her stellar eyes twinkling. Her voice still sounded like singing stars, but everyone had gotten used to it by now. Well, almost everyone. Some council members still got goosebumps. The former emperor sat in a smaller chair to the side, looking both grumpy and nervous. He'd been allowed to keep his title, but everyone knew who really held the power now. He spent most meetings staring at his daughter, probably wondering how his plan had backfired so spectacularly. Dr. White, now the head of interspecies biology studies, was giving a presentation about the success of human-alien medical cooperation. Her old tablet sat in a museum on Earth, still displaying the readings from Dawn's transformation. School children would stand in front of it for hours, watching the numbers that showed the moment everything changed. And now, Dawn said, rising from her throne, I have an announcement to make. The chamber went quiet. Even the former emperor looked up with interest. The Chrysela's guardian has detected another transformation beginning, she said. A murmur of excitement ran through the crowd. But this time, we won't hide it. This time, we celebrate it. The liquid metal guardian, still faithfully at Dawn's side, shimmered with approval. Over the past year, it had become something of a celebrity. Children across the galaxy had toys made to look like it. And there was even a popular drink called liquid metal that changed colors as you drank it. James Cooper, now the head of Human Stellar Relations, stepped forward with a thick book. We've updated all the laws, he announced. No more hiding transformations, no more arranged marriages as punishment, and definitely no more laughing at what we don't understand. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, remembering their behavior a year ago. But the biggest change, Dawn continued, her light growing brighter with excitement, is that we've discovered humans have their own kind of transformation. Not physical, like ours, but in their minds and hearts. They transform problems into solutions, enemies into friends, and yes, she smiled at Tom, even diplomatic insults into galactic alliances. Tom grinned back. Their wedding, held 3 months after her transformation, had been quite a sight. Earth's traditional wedding march had been played by a choir of actual stars, conducted by Dawn herself. The photos were already in history books across the galaxy. The future, Dawn declared, will be built on understanding, not mockery, on cooperation, not coercion, and most importantly, She raised her hand, creating a display of swirling galaxies above the chamber. It will be built together. The chamber erupted in applause. Even the former emperor clapped a little, though he tried to make it look like he was just swatting at a fly. As the applause died down, a young alien in the back raised all four of their hands. "But Empress," they asked, "weren't you afraid when they sent you to Earth?" When everyone was laughing. Dawn's laugh sounded like wind chimes made of starlight. "Afraid? No. I knew exactly what humans were like." After all, she created a small illusion of a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. They understand better than anyone that the most beautiful transformations often start with something others might call ugly. The story of the ugly princess and the humans who helped her become an empress became the most popular tale in the galaxy. Parents would tell it to their children, adding that you should never judge by appearances, because that ugly duckling might just turn out to be a cosmic swan. And somewhere in the galaxy, a new transformation was beginning. But this time, instead of laughter, there would be celebration. After all, change wasn't just inevitable. Thanks to one clever princess and some equally clever humans, it was now something beautiful.